Hello and welcome to another Infinity N5 battle report. This battle report was for a tournament which is Can'tCon26, which was hosted by Western Australia Infinity, and it was held in the second weekend of February. 6 people participated, and the results for myself was I came 6th. So this is the first list for the tournament that I brought. It is the same list that I used in the first tournament, which was New Year's Knockout. So nothing has changed, and I understand and like how this list plays. So I have a core fire team in Group 2, consisting of a Knight Hospitaller with HMG, Deferson, who is the Lieutenant, with a multi-rifle and light flamethrower, and another Knight Hospitaller with a Tinbot Firewall -3, just to provide protection for Deferson and the remaining Knights. I have a Harris in Group 1, which is a military orders Harris, consisting of a Knight of Santiago with killer hacking device, and 2 Croziers, one with a HMG and multispectral visor level 2, and the other one being a paramedic. Rounding off Group 2 is a duo consisting of a Crozier multi-sniper rifle with mine layer, and the Knight Commander chain of command, which is to back up Deferson because he's an active lieutenant, and it also helps to give the +1 special dice to the Crozier sniper rifle. Completing Group 1, we have a Curator, just the standard cheap Curator, with a Powerbot, just to spread his utility, because in most games when you sort of focus on heavy infantry, the isolated and immobilized states are the biggest threats, not so much wounds. 2 Trinitarian Fort Observers with mine layers, and they both have deployable repeater to help establish a repeater network during deployment, and a Crusader Fort Observer just to be the ace in the card, or the ace up my sleeve, sorry. This is my second list, and I wanted to try something different and test my theory about military orders having good multi-role troopers. So this list does not have any dedicated ARO presence. It consists of a duo of Deferson with Spitfire and a Knight Hospitaller with Tinbot Firewall -3. So that is a level 2 duo, and Deferson is that multi-role trooper who's both a specialist and active shooter. The next duo is a Teutonic Knight NCO and X-Visor Spitfire with a Knight of Santiago killer hacking device. This is more of the standard shooter specialist duo, and the NCO is there to utilize the Knight Commander's +1 Lieutenant order to move it around the battlefield a lot better, and the Knight of Santiago comes with its own Tinbot Firewall -3, so it's a very tight package for a shooter specialist combination. The next duo is the Knight of Justice Hacker with another Knight Hospitaller with Tinbot Firewall -3, and the multi-marksman rifle PS6 is basically a multi-rifle Spitfire. Yes, it has 1 less burst, but being in a level 2 duo, it will gain the +1 special die to have 4 dice in the initial roll to hit, obviously removing 1. And it has a pitcher which lands pretty well on 14, BS 14, and that is to help make up for the lack of deployable repeaters left by the Trinitarian. So because there's only 1 Trinitarian with a deployable repeater, obviously I'll deploy that in a position where I can set up a deterrent on one side of the table, and then the pitchers are there to fire as needed to stop any other deterrents during the game. Followed up is with a Harris, a military orders Harris, consisting of the Knight Commander +1 Lieutenant order, which would be in Hollow Mask state. Rounded out with Brother Konstantinos, because he's a bit of a multi-use trooper. He does have a multi-rifle, decharges, and a disco baller, which is quite helpful. I deactivated it to turn those disco ballers back on, and he also has sensor and is also a specialist operative himself. And rounding out with the active shooter would be the Black Friar with Thunderbolt +1 burst, because the Black Friar has albedo -6, multispectral visor level 2, and is basically a good attack piece to take out those pesky ARO units, such as a MIM -3 camo trooper with a multi-sniper rifle and MSV 1 or 2. And then lastly, a Trinitarian Fort Observer mine layer, which has the deployable repeater, just to help put out a hacking network presence in deployment. So the first mission was Akil axial interference, sorry. And I played this one once before the tournament, and it's actually not a bad game. It's a nice version of highly classified, or what was the other one? I can't remember the other name. But anyway, you have to do your classifieds, and so it makes it kind of interesting because you can play a bit of a sneaky game with it. Because once you've deployed, then you draw your 2 cards, and so normally for one classified you draw 2 and select one, but for this one you draw 2 and you pick which one that you can do for your list, and then you put the other one down as a common classified. Now, when you do these every round as well, you can sort of look at it, and by the time after the first round has happened, or even after deployment, you sort of know what your opponent has, because you're meant to let them know what troopers are deployed and what are they and such. And so you can sort of think, okay, maybe I have this trooper on my list and I can complete this classified, but my opponent does not. So maybe I'll put that one as a common because I'm restricting him in completing the common classified because I know I can do it. So there's a lot of sneaky shenanigans you can do in this mission, which is kind of nice because it's not just a matter of here's the cards, go and do it. You can have a choice. And because every round you draw 2 and put one down for a common, you can actually think about that and think, well, I've drawn 2, I know I can do this, but my opponent can do this card. But for the other card, my opponent cannot do this, but I can. So I'll maybe put that as a common. Now, obviously, people may think that's a bit redundant because you have the filter the signal, which means you can flip it out. But obviously, if you put it down, you want to complete it, right? The whole point is to complete objectives. So once you put it down, you can complete it and then run a specialist in, flip the card that you've achieved, and then if it's obviously they both have to be accomplished, but if the one that isn't accomplished, well, then you can flip it. But that is also a sneaky way because you can think, well, I've accomplished mine and my opponent knows he's going to accomplish his. I'll flip his because it's not his turn, especially if you go first. And then you can put another classified down from his deck because you don't want to mix your cards up. And then maybe it's another one that you can do as well. And then you quickly do that and then hand it over to him. So it is not too bad. Obviously, it depends on which classifieds you draw, but you can use them to your advantage, especially if you have the first turn. And if you have the second turn, well, then you're sort of dependent on flipping that card using the antenna. So this is actually a fun game, and I do enjoy it. It's one of my favorite ones for the new season. The next mission is B-Pong. There's plenty of people talking about it on YouTube already, and in the Discords and various other chat groups. We all know what it's like. It's no longer the same scoring points for kicking the beacon in the other opponent's zone. It's more just controlling everything, and it's all at the end of the round. End of the game and end of the round. It's basically it is better because you're not being disadvantaged as a second player. That is for sure. And it's much more of a defensive game. Like you want to have someone run up and just control the console, and then you can sort of protect that one and prevent your opponent from doing the other. And then maybe if you're lucky, control the tracking beacon, and you just sort of, you move into the midfield, you control the 2, one console, one tracking beacon, and then set yourself up a defense and just weather the storm, and hopefully your opponent has bad dice or isn't as savvy with your tactical planning. And then on top of that, you want to complete your 2 classifieds as well, just to score those extra points. And at the end of the game, just nudge it into their half, and then you score, most things. It's a very back and forth game. You are fighting over the consoles in the midfield, which is good. It keeps players engaged. It's not like you can just kick the beacon straight into the deployment zone and be done with it. It's not as safe as what it used to be, and it's not as order intensive either. So the current version of B-Pong is good to play. And the third game for the tournament is Area of Interest. And I've played this game once before as well, and it is a nice way of doing things. You can set it up so if you are the active player, you have the option to put the special zone down, and normally people will just put it right outside the deployment zone, and then the second player has to reach forward and dominate that. But I found during the tournament, if you cannot do that because of the way the terrain's set up and it's quite exposed, you can always just go for the activated communication antenna and just hold that as well. That will still score you 1 point per round. So while your opponent has the advantage of dominating the special interest and scoring every round, will use the second player also have the option of focusing on the antenna and keeping that activated. So then you can become a hard center and hold that active antenna. Because obviously if they go and claim it in the first round and then your turn is the second round, it's turn 2, then you can just knock them off the antenna and then just put you guys down, lay a few mines, go hard, put things back in a camo state once you've activated the antenna, of course, and just hold up and make it a shell game for them and make it hard for them to come into. And then at the end, just do a hard push. But I did find that if your opponent does put their special zone right outside the deployment zone, it is a bit of a hard stretch to make it there. This is where your midfield specialists that are camouflage come in. You know, they can push up, but then because they've set up a good defense in there, you sort of just either contesting it, hopefully the last order you move in contest it, and you do not die, or you sort of shoot off some of the smaller troopers, such as the remotes that are normally in there, such as the baggage bot or the flash pulse bots, just to, you know, basically doing a final Hail Mary gun run just to make sure they're not going to score that point. Now for the tournament. So game 1 was a kill interference. So my list for this mission I used was high and tight, the one with all the duos in it. I lost the lieutenant's role and my opponent chose to keep deployment. So that means I kept initiative and take the first turn while also deploying first. And here I had from left to right, I had the Defurson under the bridge here in a duo with a Hospitaller, the Knight of Santiago and the Teutonic Knight Spitfire and the Knight of Santiago duo here, and on the right had the Knight of Justice here with his Hospitaller Tinbot helper. Here was a Harris. I mean, this was like sort of after a couple of orders in the game, so there was a Blackfriar, Konstantinos, and the Knight Commander Hollow Masking as a simple Crozier. I had 2 HVTs over here to the left, one in the middle and one on the right. My opponent's HVT is here in the open, there, and 2 here. And my Trinitarian, which moved here, was actually in this location here because the deployable repeater is up there just to prevent anyone moving obviously through the center field there. And my opponent, he was playing Aleph, so he had a camo token up here and one down there. Had a day 1 and another one here. His reserve drop was the, what's that trooper that you can have 3 at once but it's not considered one person. Anyway, there was a small multi-knight sniper rifle there, a couple of remotes in the background. Cannot remember this one. The K2 Auxilia down here, and he had his Myrmidon tucked in the corner here. So for round 1, the common classifieds were suspected infiltration and HVT espionage, and my classified was telemetry. And so during the game, I cannot remember everything, so I'll just give you a brief summary. So my Trinitarian, from hiding in this spot, moved over to here. The initial run was to go towards this HVT, but then I realized it needs to be a hacker, not a forward observer, so I could not do that. So I just decided to keep it there and use it as a bit of a deterrent on the right there. Then my Blackfriar with Thunderbolt engaged the Daiwan and the sniper and puts the Daiwan into unconscious state and puts the sniper into no wound incapacitation. And then Konstantinos moves forward, so he eventually moves around here and fires a disco baller somewhere around here, and I think one over here from memory. And he succeeds, so it sort of blocks out that area and that area there. The Knight of Justice climbs up and moves and goes prone up to here and ends up prone in here, and he tries to complete the common classified, which was HVT espionage, but unfortunately after 3 orders is unsuccessful, so I decided to do something different, and I just moved the Teutonic Knight and the Santiago up and around before handing over to my opponent, trying to set up for a bit of a defensive run against his counterattack. So his Myrmidon ends up, I think, coming around here and throwing throws smoke, I think. Where was it? Probably around here somewhere, to try and anticipate my Black Friar shooting his sniper. And then he moves the little engineer power bot into the day one to bring it back up, and he sort of fails, and he spends 3 command tokens and eventually revives the day one. The K2 Auxilia moves out here, places 2 mines sort of right on top of each other there, and then moves back again. And then and then Dart, one of the camo tokens, does a long run and pretty much comes all the way down here. And obviously my troopers have sort of moved up, so the Constantinos was here, the Knight Commander was here, and the Black Friar with Thunderbolt was up here. And so while Dart was doing this, considering I wasn't having very good dice, I was a bit reluctant to discover her along the way. I didn't know who it was, because if I did discover, then they could shoot back, and I thought I'll just keep holding and holding, and unfortunately that kept allowing my opponent to push and push, and eventually ended up shooting my Knight Commander. I'll just clear the board a bit. So for round 2, the common classifieds were HVT Kidnapping and HVT Reverse Engineering. And I started the round in Loss of Lieutenant, and then I tried to move to first and around to here to engage the die one, which was this one up here, which moved up to here. And unfortunately he was killed. Then the Knight of Justice stood up and then tried to have a go at the sniper and was put into unconscious state. Constantinos ended up being dead because I used him to move in a CC with Dart, and obviously Dart won that, even though Constantinos has CC -3 and better CC stats. The Teutonic Knight Spitfire, which was up here, I impetuous forward up to here. He dodged the mines, which was good, but eventually ended up, he was fine after he's impetuous, but then he moves and shoots the Myrmidon, I think, and he had a few AROs and ends up unconscious up here. That was pretty much my turn. It was pretty uneventful. Disappointing that the main troopers I wanted died or went unconscious. For my opponent this turn, he basically did a long bomb run with his Doctor Engineer. Sorry, I can't remember the name. Which, hang on a second. Yeah, it moved around and out and all the way up to these 2 HVTs on the left, which pretty much spent most of the orders for that group. It did HVT Reverse Engineering on one and then did Kidnapping on the other. So that one was HVT Engineering and that one was Kidnapping. And then basically because of this, time was expired. So I only had 2 rounds total. And that was a solid game to my opponent. He pulled off a nice win, going second. Oh, sorry, I forgot I actually had 2 rounds for this game. Okay, yeah, my bad. As you can see, the common HVTs for round 2 there, and then yeah, my opponent won. So game 2 was beer pong. For this list, I used the Spray and Pray list, which is the one with just the 2 3-person groups. For this one, I won the lieutenant role. And for B-Pong, I thought I'd keep initiative and have the first turn and try and do an alpha strike on the objective first turn. And my opponent kept deployment and I deploy first. So for this, my classifieds were Vigilance and HVT Espionage. And as you can see, the deployment zone, the red lines mark out the exclusion zone and the yellow dotted lines mark out the 16-inch deployment zones. And so for this mission, I'll just bring up my notes quickly, sorry. So the Knot of Santiago Harris, which was down here, moves forward. Basically the Knot of Santiago moves up to here, this guy moves up to here, and the paramedic moves to this corner. So they're basically there, and there. And the Santiago attempts classifieds but fails. He tries to do HVT espionage because my opponent's HVT is just on the other side of this building, so it's within my zone of control. And I fail numerous orders again. So, and then I basically reposition them. I'll just tidy up the board a bit. So I had my, I think the Knight of Santiago was here, the HMG was here, and the paramedic was just here. Obviously the paramedic was, looking this way. Santiago has a 360-degree visor, so it doesn't matter, and the HMG was looking down here. And then my opponent, he ends up using a Koga Ninja. Oh wait, sorry. I did something with a Trinitarian. That's right. A Trinitarian climbs up here, moves into there, and touches the console, hoping to just hold that. But my opponent, Koga Ninja, comes up and kills my Trinitarian, and then he goes prone. And then spends a trooper throwing smoke around here to block the HMG from my Hospitaller coming down there. And there's a trooper here with decoy, ends up moving up and touching this console behind this building here. And that was the end of round 1, with my opponent claiming a couple of objective points. And then for round 2, Santiago moves up around to the corner here, staying out of line of fire, and then completes HVT espionage. And then I move this fire team on the right up. The Tinbot guy moves up and engages with the trooper holding the console. And then I think the HMG ends up here, and DeFerson comes running around up to here. And then I break the core, and then I have DeFerson climb up to here. And he engages his HMG heavy infantry with multi-spectral visor 2. Cannot remember the details, but ends up putting him in unconscious, and then I end up just pushing him back and putting him on suppressor fire, overlooking basically the midfield. So all these things are sort of in his field of fire. What else did I do? And then yeah, he has a silhouette marker, moves up to the beacon and just ends up touching that. And then again, because of time, we only complete 2 rounds, and so my opponent manages to score the objectives. I'm just happy DeFerson did not die. DeFerson did quite well for this game. He's managed to keep people's heads down and be an annoyance to my opponent. Game 3, the last game of the day, was Area of Interest. So for this I chose Spray and Pray, and I lost the Lieutenant role. My opponent kept initiative to have the first turn, so I kept deployment and chose this right corner and allowed my opponent to deploy first, and my classified was Telemetry. So just to give a heads up of where I deployed, the Santiago, the Paramedic and the HMG MSV2 fire team were here. The Curator was here with his power bot just on the line here. My core Hospitaller fire team were deployed here, and the Knight Commander and the Sniper were deployed up here with the camo token there. And Repeater in the midfield here to sort of stop this, and I think I had my Trinitarian deploy. I think somewhere here. No, sorry. It was up here. Yeah, it was up here near this vehicle here. So that's where my Trinitarian was, and that was within 8 inches of his zone of control for the repeater. And just I'll clear the board off a bit. And my opponent had, he was playing Tunguska. Oh, sorry, and I had another repeater down here, and my other Trinitarian was here, and my Crusader was off the table. My opponent had Dan McConnelly here, flash pulse bot there. I think Fiddler was behind this building. I can't remember what this one is. Perseus, Hollow Man, and the FO bot, sensor bot, together as a Harris. Miranda Ashcroft up here with a bounty hunter at the base of the building. And Miranda Ashcroft, there's always been a pain, I think. Interventor, and there's another Interventor down here. That's all I can remember from memory, sorry. So that's our deployment. So my notes for this round, what happened? Okay, so my opponent decided to risk it because obviously my sniper was the biggest threat. So he lands a vertigo zoned here, and there's a lot of line of fire, line of sight checking, but eventually that was the best place at the stairs. And that went down. He spotlit the sniper, and then a guided missile bot fired a rocket and ended up taking that out. And this is probably the interesting highlight of the game. The Hollow Man fire team moves down, the Hollow Man moves down here, but Perseus and the others and the Flash Pulse bot end up breaking as a duo and coming all around here, and Perseus ends up taking out that guy, coming around here, taking out the Timbot, and then coming around here and taking out Deferson. So in round one, I pretty much lost all three heavy infantry, and nothing I did succeeded. Well, I succeeded my success rolls, but because they were either a 1, 2, 3, or a 4, anything above that was a success for my opponent. So that was basically the game for me. Just roll really low, and my opponent just rolls high enough to beat mine and succeed his. So that was it. That was his first round, and I was kind of disappointed. So then I think, okay, what can I do to focus on the mission? Because I need to sort of at least score points. Oh, and he put an Interventor in the special zone, and I think the missile bot. So Interventor over here on the right, missile bot there on the left, just to score that special zone. And obviously, because it's right outside his deployment zone, I cannot make any attempt to move without, well, I've lost my fire team, so I couldn't move. So I decided to call down the Crusader and land in here, which he does successfully, thank goodness. Being in forward observer, moves into contact, activates this console for me, and then tucks up in the corner and goes prone, and basically just looks out this way to hold it. And the right Trinitarian, left Trinitarian moves into here in camo state and just holds that. So that was my round one. Because remember, I'm sort of working off limited orders here because it's a limited session list. My opponent in round two moves up Dan McConnelly all the way up here and finally puts down my Crusader. And then he activates his that's what these are. Those Puppet Master Puppet Bots, moves them up and activates the console. And in my round, I push up. I think somehow I lose the Spectral Visor HMG as well, but I end up in my turn pushing the Santiago up into here just to strengthen my zone. And then I reform the Knight Commander, which is here, and the Paramedic to be another duo because that one's taken out. Ready for round three. Round three, my opponent pretty much just he tries to, he takes out my Trinitarian and takes out my Santiago over here. I think that was with, what's the name, Fiddler, and then comes around here and I think just runs out of steam there. Oh, I think, no, she throws a drop bear down there or something, so takes that out to prevent me from scoring it. And then for my round 3, I had enough orders to move up to here, but Denma was here. And the Knight Commander ends up putting Denma down, but there was another trooper here. And I basically just ran out of orders, and I thought, you know what, I cannot affect the game. I was trying to do a last minute dash to score the antenna. But yeah, there's just too many obstacles in the way, and I just thought, well, you know what. Oh, so I ended up taking out his Vertigo's on while doing that. And the Knight Commander did most of the damage there. But you know, it was like a move, a jump, a move, and then took out whoever was up there. I think it was Denma. Or move, dodge, and then move, shoot again. And then I was like, nah, it's just too much. By the time I reached the objective, I have no more orders. So I just called the game, and that was the end of that, really. Yeah, so it was a bit of a disappointing tournament all round, just rolling and scoring very low. So yes, that's the end of the tournament, and that's the end of the games, and yeah, it is what it is, I guess. There's not much I can do about that. And now for the after action review for this low scoring tournament of mine. So for Akio interference, as you can see, my opponent accomplished 2 common classifieds, and because of that he accomplished more than me, and he accomplished his classified objectives as well. So that was a 5-0 win to my opponent, and it was well played too. He did play a good game. For B-Pong, again, this goes to my opponent. At the end of the round, they scored 1 objective point for controlling the beacon and 1 objective point for controlling the console, and then I just had my classified. And again, well played to my opponent. And for the last one, area of interest, this was basically a slaughter during the game, but my opponent managed to play very well and ended up with a 7-2 win to me. Goddamn Perseus. So, what did I learn this tournament? Well, a topic of discussion occurred during the game with one of my opponents, and they had placed a mad trap on the table, and I was going to move my Trinitarian and camouflage state to the mad trap's zone of control just to affect the game. However, my opponent claimed that the boost trait triggers when a trooper activates an order or ARO within the deployable's zone of control, which is correct, but that is just one line of text. So I stated that the camouflage markers do not trigger boost, only mines trigger when camouflage markers enter the blast radius. So we checked the Infinity Wiki, but that was down, and I tried to look through the resort. I tried to look through the rulebook, but it was taking too much time, so I just stopped and just agreed to go with my opponent's claim. A few days after the tournament, when I had time, I found the rule on page 72, and it explicitly states that boost is not triggered by camouflage and impersonation markers. So I guess the lesson here is, I mean, I was backing myself, but obviously I needed to show the evidence, and obviously I didn't have the time to look for the evidence. Even though I know this because I'm used to using crazy koalas from nomads, and so I had to understand the rules, and so obviously I'm aware that it doesn't trigger with camouflage. But for my opponent, it was the first time they were using ISS and using mad traps, and so it's understandable. It didn't really affect the game much because I wasn't having a good game day anyway, in terms of dice rolls. So, but still, it's always good to know. So I just want to share that, you know, for deployable pieces of equipment, weapons that have boost, a camouflage marker or impersonation marker can move through its zone of control without triggering it. It's only if they activate and reveal themselves can they be triggered. Can they be targeted? And for all other troopers, they'll just be targeted. Something I was thinking about afterwards during on the day, like when we're packing up, was just terrain in general. I found it sort of hard to think clearly. I'm not sure why, but normally I'm pretty good at setting up for a game plan and deploying, but I found the tables just to be not challenging, but I just had to think about it, and I never gave myself time to think about it. So the terrain needs to be scrutinized and thought about for deployment and movement. And while I did my best to deploy correctly, and obviously some things I've learned in previous games, such as setting up for combat drop and deployment zone troopers landing in and whatnot, and spacing everything out, after some reflection, I think I could have done better, that's for sure. Especially for the first game, I did deploy in a null setup, and I should have given more thought to where I wanted to be in turn 1, and just how I wanted to move forwards. And there were lines of fire that I was not quite aware of until I was moving them, and then I exposed my troopers to enemy fire. So that's on me, but it's just something that I've learned, just take a little bit more time to deploy, because once you deploy, you can sort of deploy in a couple of minutes. It's just understanding how you want to deploy. So I just need to scrutinize the table, look at the terrain, and just think, okay, there's all the lines of fire, here's where I want to go, can I mitigate this or not? And another thing I learned, which is helpful, is how valuable both choices are. I was originally just favouring deployment. I found deployment to be stronger, but I found initiative to be as good as well. So choosing this initiative does allow a player the first turn to maximise on scoring objectives. So for all those people who alpha strike, how about you alpha strike the objectives and not your opponent? Because these new mission setups actually favour an alpha strike of the objectives, not killing your opponent. So if you can maximise your scoring objectives in round 1, do it, because it's helpful, because some of the discussions are now that reactive player and second turn player have a lot of advantages in some of these missions, so you really want to alpha strike the objectives and not your opponent's army. So that was something I learned. And then deployment is interesting, because when deploying, sorry, what have I written here? So, however, deploying first because my opponent chose deployment puts me at a disadvantage. And the disadvantage is I'm deploying with the intention of moving my list or army to achieve my plans, but I'm unable to counter my opponent's deployment, while my opponent has the advantage of counter deploying because I've set up first. And this gives my opponent the advantage of stopping or slowing down my advance. So some players will argue that going first is the better option, and I think that is correct in most situations. However, only slightly better, because the way the new mission packs are now, they're quite balanced. Some people say, they favour second turn. It's like, okay, if your opponent's a really good player, then yes, it will favour second turn player. So it's better to, if you have initiative, to alpha strike the objectives and not your opponent. But I do think deployment is a stronger option, because it allows the second player to adjust his plan accordingly based on what information has now been revealed via the deployment of your opponent who chose to go first. And deployment gives a player 2 factors that impact the game compared to initiative's 1. So initiative only determines 1 factor, who goes first, or second, depending on what you choose. Whereas deployment involves 2 factors, who deploys first and on which side of the table. The ability to influence 2 factors makes deployment a stronger option when deciding what to keep when passing the lieutenant's role, in my opinion. So that was actually really useful to learn, and it sort of solidified in my thoughts and my experience of this game. So this is the end of the battle report. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and as always, the dice decide the outcome.